You know, whenever there is a transition of power, there's always the probability of a different orientation. The United States election in November had consequences. Every election has consequences embedded in them. I have a strong impression, and no one could say with exactitude what the Trump administration or any incoming administration is going to do. But I have a very strong inclination based upon people I know who are relatively close to the foreign policy thinking of the first Trump term, that his approach to the African continent and his approach to the world is going to be one focused on trade and investment. It's going to come from the vantage point of a business person looking at the world from the perspective of how can we best do business with the world. And so I've said to people in Tanzania just the other day when I was talking to the Vice President of Tanzania, and also when I talked with the Minister of Finance, that countries that are agile, that are interested in building a trade and investment climate conducive to external investment will in all probability do well. President Trump is a business person, and I want this to be clearly understood. Business people tend not to be overly patient people. And that's not a negative statement. That's a statement about the nature of business. When you're trying to go into a negotiation on settling a major operational deal, you want flexibility, you want agility, you want to move with some degree of efficiency. So countries that poise themselves to open up a good business climate will do exceedingly well. Countries that are very, very slow in process will probably find that their neighbor will be the business partner and not them.
From your experience here in Tanzania, how fair do you think we will, how would we fare in that approach?
You know, I was reading The Citizen this morning, and I was quite impressed by the fact that the media here is beginning to say that the LNG project is near an imminent conclusion. That's a good sign for where Tanzania is in terms of trying to do business. About 4 months ago, I met with some of the key negotiators on the LNG project here in Tanzania, and we talked about the need to move with a greater degree of speed, while at the same time making sure that Tanzania has the best deal out of the project. And now that we see that the LNG project just might reach a culmination in the first quarter of this year, that's a good sign. Tanzania has been working on a number of things that I think projects well for the future. Another example, President Samia has said that she wants to see 20% of all of the gold that is extracted from Tanzania stay and build a reserve. Now, I strongly encourage Tanzania to follow through with that. Because if Tanzania follows through with that process, it could conceivably have one of the largest gold reserves on the planet. And when your money is backed by a gold reserve, you're not going to worry about all of the ups and downs of the market, and you're not going to be worried about how different economies can project their expected income and may or may not meet those goals. If your fiscal foundation is backed by gold, you are in the best position for negotiating globally. And so what Tanzania should do, and I encourage Tanzania to do, is to be consistent with those policies. Your Minister of Minerals and Mines has said, and again, I agree with him 1,000%, he has said that Tanzania wants to move away from allowing countries to extract and export. What he wants to see is extraction, beneficiation, value addition, then export. similar to what we're trying to do with the Timbo Kabenga nickel project, where once the nickel is extracted from Tanzania, by the time it leaves Tanzania, it would be already in a produced form where it could immediately go into a battery. That's what creates wealth. That's what creates a foundation. So I'm rather, to use financial terms, I'm rather bullish about Tanzania's possibilities. If the Ministry of Minerals and Mines maintains the stance that beneficiation and value addition is required, if Tanzania stays forward with the desire to have 20% of the gold stay in Tanzania as a reserve, and if Tanzania moves with agility and flexibility and some degree of efficiency and speed, in the 4 years of the Trump administration, Tanzania could end up faring exceedingly well.
Minerals and gas aside, what other potential products do you think Tanzania can offer?
Agricultural products. I met with 90 last year. There was a farmer here in Tanzania that had already signed a deal with Walmart, which is one of the largest distributors in the world for food products. And I think it was waiting for final approval from the Ministry of Agriculture. And when you could take Tanzanian products, agriculture products, and have it in the international market, I do know that you have Tanzanian avocados already in Europe, and you have Tanzanian food products going to India and other places in the world. There's another niche that Tanzania has, and not so much with a partnership with the U.S., but with a partnership with India. Tanzania is doing extremely well in terms of the medical markets, where during COVID, for example, a lot of people came to Tanzania for medical treatment. Well, now India and Tanzania has the kind of connection that many of the physicians from India are coming and working here in Tanzania, and which then makes it the best of Indian medical world and the best of Tanzanian medical world. And several months ago, I was talking with the president of Abbott, which is one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world. The Abbott Foundation president was here, and the former president and CEO of Abbott, the business side. And Abbott is in the process of trying to explore how it can produce pharmaceuticals in Tanzania and then distribute from Tanzania to other parts of the world. The most powerful, potentially the most powerful trade route in the next 30, 40, 50, 60 years is going to be the Indian Ocean trade corridor. All right. No other nation on the earth is better situated to control effectively the movement of goods on the Indian Ocean corridor with connectivity to the Middle East, to Europe, to Africa, to Asia, than Tanzania is. So if Tanzania develops its ports with great efficiency, operational efficiency, Tanzania is in the best position of anybody to take advantage of the fact that the Indian Ocean trade corridor is rapidly becoming one of the most productive trade corridors on the planet.
Fair enough. Let's talk politics now. Big year in Tanzania. Sure. We've got elections, general elections coming up later this year. What's your take on democracy in Tanzania? You know,
democracy is an interesting thing. Democracy is a journey. Democracy is a process. There is no such thing as a perfect democracy. The U.S. democracy is in process. So that's why we're always working at trying to make the democracy better. So where Tanzania is in terms of its evolution toward democracy cannot be and should never be compared to where the U.S. is in its evolution of democracy. The U.S. has had 250 years in the process. Tanzania has had 60-some years in the process. So one has to look at where Tanzania is now based on where Tanzania was when Tanzania was first founded as an independent country. If you look at it from that frame of reference, you could see noticeable, documentable progress. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm asking this because we've seen in many instances when elections happen in Africa, you get the US and the West pointing out faults and saying that the elections were not fair. That's why I'm asking, when you look at it, what do you think? What comes into your mind when you look at democracy in Tanzania and, of course, the rest of our
when I look at democracy in Tanzania, I see a democracy in process. I see a government that is trying to focus on the direction of improvement. I don't see perfection. Well, I don't see perfection in the US. I don't see perfection in the UK or in Australia. There's no place on the planet that it is perfect. But I see process and I see progress. You know, when you look at, for example, how Tanzania was focused on a single party system, a multi-party system, and now it seems to be a system where there are multiple parties, but yet you have a predominant party. In the US, we have two parties. We don't have multiple parties in the US, you have two parties. In Tanzania, you have one dominant party and then you have some other parties. The number of political parties is not the relevant issue. The relevant issue is governance. You know, I taught political philosophy for part of my academic career, and I've always pointed out that it is how a government governs that makes the difference. You could have a single party if it meets the needs of the people, ends poverty, eradicates the big divide between the rich and the poor, provide education for boys and girls, provide opportunities for housing, provides jobs. Or you can have a two-party system like you have in the US. It's governance that's more important than the form of the government is how the government governs. That's what determines governance. So what I see Tanzania struggling with, as all of us are struggling with, how do we reach a point that we are governing in such a way that the people will say the government respects the people who actually give the government the authority to govern? Because the authority to govern doesn't come from the government. It comes from those who are governed. And so the people of Tanzania have in their hands whether or not Tanzania will move forward with excellent governance or not. Because at the end of the day, it is the people who evaluate whether their needs are met, not the government that tells the people that your needs are met or not met.
Yourself now, we're just about to leave now.
Yes,
Going back to the US. Happy, sad?
No, but you know, I'm extremely happy about the 2 wonderful years I've had the opportunity to be in Tanzania, a country that I have phenomenal admiration for, because I have phenomenal admiration for Julius Nyerere. And the vision he had, not just for Tanzanian people, but the vision he had for all people who were in the process of moving toward full freedom. Nyerere was a liberationist. Yeah. So I have a great admiration for Nyerere, and I have a great admiration for the belief that Nyerere's dream of a unified, solid country that is progressive and that is prosperous is in the process of becoming very, very real. So the only sad thing is that I will miss seeing the people of Tanzania on a daily basis. But long before I became ambassador to Tanzania, my wife and I used to come here for vacation. We will come back for vacation. Quietly, incognito, no fanfare, just chilling out in Tanzania because it's a beautiful, beautiful place to be.
Where would you want to visit when you come quietly, when you come back?
Arusha, absolutely. Zanzibar, without question. Dar es Salaam. And I want to see Dodoma emerge to be the city that President Nyerere envisioned it to be. And I, of course, enjoy Mbeya because my good friend Sugu is in Mbeya. And I will go and hang out with him. Some of the best food in Mbeya is at his restaurant. So I will, now this is not an endorsement of a restaurant, by the way, but it is exceptional food. So I will go and hang out in places like that. And I love Bagamore because of the history of Bagamore and because President Kikwete's ancestry is from Bagamore. So all of the country is beautiful.
What's your best experience here in Tanzania so far?
While
on duty?
While on duty.
Yeah.
My best experience on duty is seeing the commercial dialogue start. You know, for a long time, we had talked country to country about improving trade relations, but we had never decided how to structure a conversation about it. So the commercial dialogue that started last year, we just finished the first year, it's a 3-year process. What I envision at the end of that 3-year process is that we would have defined every trade barrier that exists between the U.S. and Tanzania and would be in the process of finding resolution. I think that probably is one of the greatest joys. Now, if the LNG deal is actually consummated in the next couple of months, that would be a major, 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 major success. Not just for the U.S., which has a very small part of the investment, only about 17%, but for Tanzania. The ability to produce billions of dollars a year into the Tanzanian economy, and Tanzania's capacity to establish an alternative LNG supply line to Europe will create a bond between Tanzania and Europe because Europe will need the LNG. And at the same time, that LNG could revolutionize how people cook and do things in Tanzania consistent with the clean cooking. And there's another thing that is almost at the point of being finalized that I was working on in my 2 years here, and that's the possibility that Starlink might be present here in Tanzania. If that happens, every single neighborhood and community in Tanzania will have access to reliable, dependable, rapid internet.
Well, we've heard that the president of Tanzania, Samia Suluhu Hassan, saying, you know, clean cooking is her priority. So
yes.
Yeah. Talking about, if you go back to the US, and how would you describe Tanzania and Tanzanians to someone who's never been to Tanzania?
I would describe Tanzania as a country that intentionally sets aside more of its land for conservation than any other country. I would describe Tanzania as a country with a vision. I would describe Tanzania as a country that, while it is a non-aligned country, is deeply engaged in leadership in SADC, leadership in the EAC, leadership in the African Union, and leadership on the global scale. I would describe the Tanzanian people as warm, compassionate, thoughtful, creative, smart, business savvy people. I would probably tell some about people like you, whose career in BBC reached the point that you were able to say, I have a vision for Tanzania, and I think I could go back to Tanzania and cause things to happen in a significant way. That's how I would describe Tanzania and Tanzanian people.
Any regrets?
I have absolutely no regrets. And you know, I'm not saying that from a vantage point of it's a nice thing to say. I'm saying it from a legitimate, authentic sense. I have zero regrets about my time in Tanzania. I have zero regrets about my hopefulness and about my positivity toward Tanzania. Zero regrets. And I say that with full confidence and without fear of contradiction.
Crown Media. Hapa ni nyumbani.